Yeah,
So while my in-laws were here, check this out. We also went to, you ever been to Ground Zero?
I have not.
Wow. Let me tell you, like it was, I mean, I have not been down to Ground Zero. I think I walked after they cleaned it up. I think I was down there briefly and I wasn't even like, I don't think I was too, I think it was when the pit was there and I saw the pit, but I have not, and that was, I don't know, 2004, 5, 6, 7, something like that. I don't remember, but I have not been down there since it's all done.
Mhm.
And it is impressive for so many reasons. I mean, emotionally, I was surprised that my wife, who's not even American, was like, we were both struggling to not have an emotional event. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it was tough. It was really tough. I mean, beautiful. It's got to be the cleanest place in New York City. I mean, they don't have any traffic going down there. So when you get off the subway, like that whole lower financial district is just pedestrian, which was
Mhm.
just so nice because it was really quiet. There, there was malls and shopping, and you see Wall Street, I think, from down there. Um, uh, but the memorial and the museum it was pretty intense.
Yeah, I can
I
imagine.
recommend it. You know, it's hard to say I recommend you go have that emotional experience, but
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's probably something. Yeah. So, how did the family take it? The young ones, your kids, how did they take that in?
yes. So my 6-year-old, she's a really sensitive. She's really sensitive. She can't sit through Pixar movies in the theater. So, the loud lights and bangs and emotions, and she's really sensitive. So
Mhm.
I don't think I think she was more bored than anything. But when she started asking questions, my parenting style is I don't hide the world from the girls.
Mhm.
So they learn about all the functions of life and society. And when she started asking some questions, and then we had to, and I started explaining that this is a memorial for a lot of people who died, and I may not have used the word terrorist too many times.
Mhm.
I but I just said some bad people crashed some
Yeah.
planes into some buildings, and it hurt a lot of people. And when a couple of the gears clicked or meshed, she I think she got upset, and then she didn't want to be there. But she's also smart too, so she can be manipulative when she wants something or doesn't want something.
Mm.
So I think she was trying. There was a little bit of like, I don't want to be here anymore, but it was because there was a lot of walking.
Right.
The 9-year-old was, or the 10-year-old was, she was soaking it in. You know, she was like, wow, this also sucks to do all this walking, but this is pretty crazy.
Mm. Now, had she heard anything about it before that, or was she like, "Oh, this is 9/11, or this is the Trade Center Memorial," or anything like that?
So like how families get in their story time routine, and
Mhm.
you tend to regurgitate the same stories over and over again. So like me and her mother talk about the early days when we were in college. We've talked about it before. I mean, we both talked about where we were when it happened. So she knows anecdotally kind of about it, but I don't think there was a lot of substance to her understanding of what it was. And
Yeah.
even at 10 years old, I don't think she really took away, like I went to Ellis Island when I was in 7th grade, but like, I don't think I really understood the gravity of Ellis Island, even at 7th grade.
Mhm. Right.
So
Yeah, I don't think you can truly appreciate some of that stuff, especially, even if you don't have kids, or if you're even a little, there's the educational piece, and then there's the experience piece, when you have young kids and you're thinking about, man, can you imagine these people just got on a boat with nothing and came to Ellis Island, just like without any sort of guarantees of a better life, just kind of the hope or the idea or the concept of a better life. And you get into the stories about people who literally thought the streets were paved in gold, because that was sort of the expression that they used. And and then they got here, and some people made something of their lives, and some didn't. Some sort of
Yeah.
went backwards, but the majority of them
It
hopefully experienced a good experience. But yeah, I mean, you can learn all that, but then until you actually have kids and think about like just going to some foreign land, I mean, it's something that we won't get to experience until we colonize another planet or have some sort of
right.
floating. I mean, the idea of going someplace and not knowing what it looks like is just, it's really hard to fathom.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm one thing that is for sure is museums are for parents.
Sure.
Definitely not for children.
Right. Right. Unless it's identified as a kids museum or kids
Yeah. I'm
experience.
pretty sure even when I was a kid, I didn't like the children's museum.
Oh,
I don't
really?
know. Yeah, I don't know because the walking and like the forced participation of like
Mm,
this is where we are doing this thing now. And I may not have been a normal kid, but like, I remember the children's museum in West Hartford here was a really popular spot, and like you're always slow walking in a line, and then like if it's a
yeah.
busy day or if you're with a class, like you can't always like get access to the activity, and um, but I guess that was me just naysaying.
Were you one of these kids who didn't like other kids or thought you were like, I don't want to say
No,
better than them, but you kind of
no,
felt like you were more of the chaperone or the parent sometimes?
no, the opposite. I was like, I wanted to play all day, every day with everybody, as many people as possible. I wanted to play soccer all day. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Swimming in the summer, tag, hide and seek, like
Mhm.
that was who I was. So like the dry air of a museum while you're like slow walking in front of everybody. And yes, there may be some autonomy to like when you're in the activity, but then you're like looking over down the line of kids. Imagine if you're like on a
Right.
school trip or something, and you're like, how many more kids until I can get my hands on that thing? And then
Mm,
by the time you get there, you're looking back, and I just have I have people guilt. So I'm like, well, I don't want to now take too long with this. You know what I mean? So I'm like trying to get
mhm.
it in. So that's the memory I have of like children's museums.
Yep. Yeah, lines are just brutal, and you
Oh
don't
God.
have, and the younger you are, the less concept. My son is actually really good with time, so if we tell him, okay, this is going to be 15 minutes, he may not like it, but he can sort of process how long that is. But yeah,
Me
I
and
mean,
my youngest cannot.
Yeah, yeah, the Connecticut Science Center is pretty good. That's pretty hands on.
I was actually gonna say that is the girls do love that place. I mean,
Mhm.
that water play room
Yeah.
on the ground floor where you first
Mhm.
enter. I mean, it's what a great way to start that experience in the museum. That they love it.
And I think that was, that's relatively, we would say it's a new building, right? But it's probably been around there for 10 years or something like that. Everything's 10 years, right?
Yeah, right.
Um,
It's been a while.
but I think that's probably the new wave of, as we understand child psychology, how to get them involved, because that's like the first thing that everybody does. So it gets them involved. It's sensory. They're in it, and it kind of, especially if you're there in the morning, and it wakes them up a little bit, and and then they can do I mean, the whole museum, or weird to call it a museum, but the whole experience is very hands on. But I think
Right.
that's the idea of getting them in motion and getting them touching, feeling, splash on their clothes, and
Right.
it's a good way to kind
Yeah.
of get them going.
Yeah. The girls. I never want to get wet in public, right? Because I'm like, I don't want to walk around wet. These girls,
Hmm.
they don't care if they have mayonnaise in their hair and soaking wet shoes, and you know what I mean.
Hmm.
It's so funny. I love it.
Yeah, we was it 2 weekends ago we did like, we're obsessed with like these little train rides now. We actually took the train from
Oh yeah.
Meriden to Hartford and then walked to the Science Center, which is a little bit under a mile.
It's kind of a
Um,
hike, but you can do it.
yeah, yeah, but my 4-year-old, he was into it. On the way back, maybe it was a little bit, but he walked the whole way. I did carry him for a little bit once we got to the park, but
I
it
think
was it
Hartford
was
has a shuttle that just does laps. Did
they
you
do, but that's no
consider
fun.
that?
But
Right,
he
right. Well, you're a runner, so a mile is easy for you. I'm like the
yeah.
4-year-old. Give me the give me the
Yeah,
shuttle.
maybe a bit much for him, but he did it. He did it. He's got this little checkbox things, and he gets demerits for whining or crying. So
Yeah,
that's been
yeah.
it's a big change for him. But yeah, that was super fun. It was a cold, windy day, and in the cities when the wind kind of whips through
Right.
alleys or buildings or whatever. But yeah, we
Have you
took the
done
20-minute train ride from Meriden to to Hartford. By the time you get your seats, it's time to get up and get
Yeah.
off pretty much.
Yeah.
But it's fun. The tickets are like $3 or $4 or something like that. So
Yeah, that's fun. When we went to Ground Zero, I drove us to Westport, and then we hopped on the MTA into Grand Central,
mhm.
and then we took the subway down to Ground Zero, and couldn't be easier. I mean, the only disappointing thing is that there's an MTA route that comes up to Waterbury, and
Mhm.
it's just such a shame that that does not go to Hartford, like connect to Hartford.
Oh, I
So
know. Yeah.
so you could just beeline right down there. I mean, it's just such a shame.
Yeah. What'd you pick Westport? Was there
Um,
any connection there or just
well, I didn't want to. I was contemplating Bridgeport because we took 15 down.
Mhm.
15 and 8, I think culminate in the Bridgeport area,
Mhm.
and I just didn't feel good about parking in Bridgeport. So I was
Yeah.
like, well, let me go a couple more miles towards New York, a little less time on the train, and I know
Mhm.
Westport is upper middle class area, so I figured the parking might be a little bit better. It was
Mhm.
perfectly safe parking. There were two cops stationed, and so it was like it worked out. But there is a little, you have to go on 95 a little bit, and there was like a little bit of traffic there, but it worked out. I'm thinking the next time we go down, I'm going to try going from Waterbury, because for
Mhm.
us, Waterbury is only 35 minutes if traffic is working with you, to Waterbury. But then I think it's 2.5 hours on the train,
Mhm.
and you have to make a switch in Bridgeport. So I don't know. It's like it almost feels like just stay in a car for an hour, get down to the 95 corridor, and then just pick your train. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, there's a ton of different options. I mean, you could take the Amtrak from Hartford to New Haven. You could do that too. And then you
We've
could
done
go in
that.
from New Haven to the yeah, it's fun. Trains are fun. Kids like trains. What did they think about the subway experience?
Um, my in-laws are travelers, so they were like, it was a non-experience. My wife, same thing, she's fine. Me and the girls were like, ugh, it's sticky and gross down here, and it is hilariously disgusting.
Yes.
The New York City subway, like hilariously disgusting. Um, it's How do I say, there? It's unfortunate that there are, it's we all share this public space called life. You know what I mean? And everybody has a right to be wherever they want to be, but some there are people who live outdoors and don't shower very often, and um, you can almost see them as like, who's that guy from Charlie Brown, with the
Yeah.
cloud
Big
around him?
Ben?
Yeah,
Big Ben?
you
Yeah.
you can almost spot them in the crowd because everyone else looks normal.
Mhm.
Everybody else looks normal, but then you see, like, and you share the space. And every time we got on the subway, one of them was there and present, and it just added a nice horrific stink to where you were standing. And everybody's looking at each other the same way, and everybody has compassion for it, so it's not even, that's that. But if you know it it was but then that's not even it's the people aren't the problem. It's like you go down to the platforms and the landings and the subways, and like, if you when the train is not there, and you just kind of look at the architecture and the infrastructure of the tunnel and where the rails, it's just caked with this like black carbon soot.
Mhm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've been down there?
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and it's definitely something that's uniquely American and uniquely, um, I don't wanna say it adds to the charm, but it's kinda like you know what you're getting into, and
Yeah.
you watch these, videos, or you go to another country and you look at their public transportation, and it's like, "Oh, man," the Japanese train system and how they built that, and it's unbelievable how clean and efficient and fast it is.
I mean, the
Um
train in DC is nice. You
Mhm.
ever been through the DC system?
I have not.
It's
No.
really nice. Like the
Mhm.
down the tunnel landings and the stations all underground are it they're like they're vast, and they're big open spaces, and they're dark, and you know you're in a cave or something, but they're big open spaces, clean tiles for the most part. Kind of a pleasant experience, pretty impressive. And then the architecture is really kind of thought out, kind of down there. When you're in the New York City subway tunnel system, like the ceilings are, I think, 9 feet or 8 feet, so like you could touch like high voltage wires above your head,
Right.
and like it's
Hmm.
it's it's pretty interesting. But here's the thing: the DC system still requires you to get the stupid card. You have to go to kiosks, get a card, put money on the card, and then use the card everywhere you go. New
Hmm.
York City supports the express transit feature. It's basically like contactless pay.
Yeah,
And with the Apple Watch, or the Apple, we all have Apple Watches, and we were just like blitzing right through, the system. So logistically, it was very easy.
that's nice. That's
Yeah,
nice.
that was pretty nice.
And we should point out that the stations in New York are very nice. Grand Central or Moynihan they're still beautiful.
Grand Central's beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
Grand Central's beautiful, and they have a really awesome food court on the
Hmm.
downstairs level. I mean, yeah, without a doubt, it's beautiful. Penn Station, though, have you ever been to Penn Station?
Yeah, that's the new. They changed that to Moynihan Station or
Oh, okay, it's not Penn anymore.
Moynihan. Yeah, it's beautiful. The redo. I was there for the first time a couple weeks ago. It was really nice.
Oh wow. I was there 5, 6 years ago. I took a connection to get down to DC to see my son, and it was not. What's going on in the news in your world? Anything interesting? I see your social. You're still pumping the retirement, the Connecticut retirement requirement.
Yeah, yeah, still a lot of talk on that. I feel like it hasn't really still kind of more of an industry thing than kind of a general public kind of thing. There's been some it's it's interesting because it's always good to see, anything that raises awareness and gets more people involved is good. Um, but in Connecticut, it's a program that they started developing in 2016, which doesn't feel like that long ago. But in any that fast-moving industry, I mean, 7 years. It's like by the time they rolled it out, it's like, yay, we got this great program. But I mean, at this point, it would have been a great program in 2016. Now it's kind of, yeah, and they're out promoting it, and they're sort of caught in the awkward spot where they're promoting this as a new and revolutionary, but it's very rarely, if ever, in the best interest of the business or the employees to participate in it. So it's kind of a weird spot, but they're getting businesses to sign up. There's the two components. There's the mandate, which you have to have some sort of program, and then the state is also saying we have this program as another solution. So they've sort of intentionally or maybe unintentionally kind of merged those things together where it's saying, oh, you've got this deadline, you need to sign up for something, here's the link to our program. I feel like they're not communicating it great. Like, we are a solution that's on the table with many other solutions. Pick what's best for you and your employees. But they're sort of cramming this all in together. Like, you've got a month left to sign up for this program. Here's a link. And that's not necessarily the case. You've got a
Mm.
month to sign up for a program. But so anyway, I know we've talked a lot about that, but that's a month away. So trying to build some additional content around that. One of the things I'm doing is I'm reaching out to record keepers. So that's a platform that you can put retirement plans on. So you have payroll providers like ADP Paychecks. You have some more traditional insurance type companies that are out there, like Avoya or Principal or something like that. You have some mutual fund related companies that you would think of them as more investment management, like a Fidelity or an American Fund. So you've got all these different retirement plan platforms, and they're not historically great at getting their message out. So what I'm trying to do is reach out to representatives I know from each one of those companies and say, hey, give me 10 or 15 minutes about why we should be using your platform as a solution to comply with the state mandate. And that's been pretty well received. So I'm recording one today that we're going to put out. And hopefully I'll be able to get through, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 by the end of March, and then we'll do some in April. But so I'm going to try to post on that today about LinkedIn, and I don't know, call it record keeper connection or something like that, and maybe use a K in connection. I don't know, trying to figure out if it deserves its own brand or not. But just trying to get different messages out there so that when people search, they're like, oh, here's these different solutions. And if I want to, listen to 10 minutes on this particular record keeper, and maybe even use that as part of their due diligence file too, that says, okay, we're on this platform and I watched videos and reviewed these other 2 or 3, or I don't have a plan yet, and here was my due diligence. I watched these videos. So I'm pretty excited about that. We'll see how that shakes out.
Does the state have like a annual declaration form that businesses are going to have to submit, or what's the compliance
Yeah,
measures?
good question. Initially, they're sending you an email with a code, and if you have an existing retirement plan, you log in with that code, certify that you have a retirement plan. They think that in the future they'll be able to link that with the public databases that show everybody that has a 401k, and they'll be able to link that up. So if you have an existing 401k, they'll be able to just say, okay, they're in this system, so that box is checked in ours. To no fault of their own, that database is lags because you've got a certain amount of time to file your 5,500, and then you're filing for the previous year. So, you could be 18 to 24 months behind. You could be out of business and terminated your plan or something like that. So it's not ideal, but that's something that they're, I think, working on.
Is that a lead? Is that a lead database,
A
or
lead.
would be
It could be, yeah. Yeah, I know a
consultants?
lot of people use it to that. But again, some of it's like any other database. It lags, So you might pull up a 5,500 that was signed by Joe Smith, and then you call, ABC Manufacturing and say, hey, can I speak to Joe Smith? And then you get, Joe Smith hasn't worked here in a year and a half. Click, So you have to be careful about that.
Right.
But that's where LinkedIn can come in handy and all that sort of stuff. So. But yeah, there is a self-certification process for now, which really isn't that, it's probably a 5-minute task if you've got an existing plan, but it is something businesses want to do by the end of March.
What about tax season? We're just about finishing. Well, we're more than halfway through Q1. March 1 is tomorrow. Any words of wisdom for tax season?
No, just make sure you get your documents. I think for me, kind of March 1st almost kicks off filing season, if you will. You don't want to file too early because we get corrected information, so corrected 1099s or something, and then so that could be a problem. So usually that second wave of 1099s is mid February, and you might get some corrected stuff through the end of February. So I've had people reaching out, say, oh, can you send me my tax forms? A lot of people,
Well,
the default now is to get everything electronically. So when people are signing up for new accounts, that box is usually checked, and it's people's, clicking through stuff, and
right.
so you always get those calls that, hey, I never got my 1099. It's like, yeah, you got it, but it went to spam or you ignored it or whatever. So there's a few clients that I will actually physically print them out and just mail them. If it's got my name and logo and it's in paper, then I can kind of, at least I know they got them. So it's kind of a value
Right.
add. But yeah, starting to get a lot of those sort of questions or
And obviously no
follow-up
more
texting.
contribution. No more contribution. Contribution ended at the end of the last calendar, right? So
Mm-hmm.
no more money manipulation. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. Filing
No,
season,
I
right?
mean, you have until your filing date, April 15th, if you want to do an IRA for the previous year. So
Yeah.
sometimes you get that too. So sometimes people go in to do their taxes and the accountant says, you know what, why don't you do an IRA for 2022? So they'll call me and they'll say, do we, check that box for last year? So,
Make that 6,500. Is it 6,500 for the contribution?
yeah, for 2022, I think it was 6,500.
Cool.
Those limits are now indexed for inflation. So, so they'll change every year. I used to have those like memorized all the time, and usually I do. But this time of year, when you're dealing with, 2 years of limits, it's like I better double check every time. It's
Yep.
just not worth pumping out the wrong information. But yeah, so check those limits. And also too, just kind of a tidbit, if you're looking to clip if a lot of times when you send in a contribution, if you do it online or if your advisor does it, it will default to the current calendar year. So you might put a contribution in on April 14th, but the IRA, the custodian, they still might code it as 2023, even though your intention was to code it for 2022. So make sure you're very clear about the year that it's designed to meet the satisfy the requirements for. So make
Mm,
sure you're coding it like that. And custodians are pretty good now. Usually they have a tab now where you can log in and you can see if you're putting money in, how close to you are to that limit. So I have some clients who, they'll maybe do $100 a month or something like that, and then in April they'll call and they'll say, how much did I put away for 2022? Can I put can I get up to the limit? So we'll go back and we'll check, and now we'll say, okay, your 2022, you did 1,500. So let's get you to that limit. So just make sure it's coded properly for the contribution year.
right. All right. Switching gears. Remember the LastPass hack?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So there's some more. There's some some more juice in this berry, unfortunately.
Okay.
This thing is a mess.
Oh boy.
We are a LastPass reseller, and so we were sent this email yesterday. We are writing to update you on a recent security incident. We are giving you advance notification because we recognize that LastPass, we're called a managed services provider. You may need additional time to prepare your organization. With that in mind, we are providing you with a full visibility in advance of our general announcement. I don't know if I want to read everything here, but it's basically I think they're putting the bow on this thing. I think this is they're kind of putting the bookend on the whole event, the incident. They want to start putting this behind them. I think they restate what happened. It was a two-step attack. One of their engineers' home computers was compromised, and then through that compromise, the hacker was then able to get into the data center of LastPass. So it was a two-step hack, and they basically go on. This is from, no, I guess that's not. They publish these security bulletins that this is a letter actually to our LastPass customers. This, I believe, is the letter from the CEO. Let me just see. Yeah, CEO Kareem Tuba. But yeah, it just looks like they want to put a bow on it. I don't know how else to describe it. They reemphasize what happened. What did we do? How did it happen? What did we do to mitigate this going forward? And then there's information. So they describe incident 1, incident 2. Software engineer's corporate laptop was compromised. Then in incident 2, the threat actor targeted a senior DevOps engineer by exploiting vulnerable third-party software, which they leave wonderfully ambiguous throughout this. They describe what data was accessed, which is basically everything. The vaults were downloaded because of the technology they use to encrypt the vaults. You know what a dictionary or brute force attack is?
No.
So a dictionary a dictionary attack, also known as a brute force attack, is literally you can have a notepad file on your computer with a billion lines of strings, just starting with 1. The next line is 1 1. Next line is 1 1 1. The third line is 1 1 1 1. And you could just have this. And their hackers have these well-known dictionary files, which are not only the entire dictionary, many in different languages, and then all the combinations of popular passwords. And then every time a password database is stolen, it's uploaded into this dictionary file. So then you could take a program and write a program to use this dictionary file and just test it against any software or login or credentials that you want to try to get into. And nowadays, that kind of attack is usually pretty fast, but you can also just run the computer for days and weeks if you're really trying to get into a very specific account. The reality is today, so many credentials are available in the dark web that unless somebody specifically is being targeted, and even in many cases, if somebody is being specifically targeted, it's just so easy. There's just so many accounts available to compromise, and LastPass does nothing to help in that regard. The encryption that they use on their vaults for the data file apparently is not built in such a way that prevents a dictionary attack.
Mhm.
So the hack downloaded the vaults, and now they have the vaults, and now they can just bang against them with password attacks, or dictionary attacks rather. So that's why it's kind of a nightmare. They talk about what you should do, from what we should do, what the free premium and family accounts should do, and what
Okay.
LastPass business administrators should do. It gets very technical. I reviewed all this late last night, and um, just we're formulating a response to support our customers. The home users, obviously, there's nothing we can do for them.
Mhm.
But basically, it amounts to resetting your master password, resetting your MFA, and then changing every single password in your vault. I mean,
Wow.
that's really what it boils down to.
Wow.
There's some other things if you use user provisioning and some enterprise features that you want to do to reset that. Resetting MFA globally across an entire organization is pretty disruptive, but
Mhm.
shouldn't be so disruptive that the users can't handle it, because at this point most of our users have registered an MFA account before, and that MFA reset doesn't apply if you're using what's called a single sign-on SSO. So there's but it's just a this is it's bad. It's really bad.
All right, so let's break that down a little bit. So what is it? Is the attack bad? Their communication? What do you think is the worst part of it?
The worst part of it is the hack itself, in that, like, I guess the haul, how do I describe it, right? So, like, the thing that the hackers won is, like, they get a slow clap for it. I mean, they targeted a password managers in all things technology. Like, the more easy something is to use, the less secure it is. That's just the way it is.
Mhm.
So password managers, and I was late to the password manager game. Like, I came around maybe 2019, 2020, to realizing that password management now is so cumbersome for most users that if you use a password manager, it helps you generate secure passwords, because that's the most important thing, is generating a secure password. That's not like using your mind to come up with a string and then add some ones and zeros at the end of it. It's like using the password manager to generate an arbitrarily generated password with length and complexity. So the benefits of that, I started, and it's just not me, it's the industry at large, is like, yes, the password manager becomes a single point of failure or a single point of attack, but the benefits of having secure accounts managed by it was really kind of it was a tough call to make. And
Mhm.
honestly, I wish I made it later sometimes, based on this
Yeah.
attack,
Okay.
because this is the thing that I didn't want to be right on.
Mm.
I didn't want to be like, well, if you use a password manager, it's where the hackers are going to concentrate all of their energy. You know what I mean? So the worst part about it is the haul. They got everything.
Mhm.
As far as LastPass, the company, their response, I think their communication. I mean, they even write in the in this letter. They said that they realized that they were admonished for not. We heard the feedback, taken it seriously. We should have communicated more. So, like, they even said, like, we should have communicated more. I honestly think that more communication is better always,
Mhm.
but I actually commend them for the communication that they did provide.
Okay.
Some of their language, I mean, and you can't blame them. A lot of their language about the details of the hack, they've rounded the sharp edges, the sharp corners of the details. they're ambiguous in a lot of ways, but that's also kind of necessary for security as well. You don't you don't necessarily reveal specific details of your security measures, because then you expose them to vulnerabilities by doing that.
Hmm.
So there's a trade-off to that. Um, it's just all around awful. I can't speak, and a lot of my contemporaries in the technology world will have opinions, and they'll make assumptions, and they'll interpret a lot of this, and I there's a couple IT YouTubers out there with pretty decent followings, and he makes some pretty strong opinions and claims, but he's also sponsored by a major competitor of
Oh.
LastPass. I think he may even say he's not, but then I've seen videos where he said he is. Um, and so it's like the big one hit and it hurt a lot of people. And what do you do? I mean, if you put it in context of like Microsoft and Apple and Android, those operating systems are being compromised every single day,
Hmm.
So we put our trust in those systems every single day. We know that they're going to have new vulnerabilities. We know they're going to be exploited. We know if you click a link or if you do this or do that, there's going to be a vulnerability. So it's just kind of weird. It's the nature of a password manager is it's your keychain. I mean, Apple calls their password manager literally keychain. So um, what do? You keep using it? You keep using and trusting a password manager, or do you go offline? Do you use a notepad? Do you use the magic 8 ball to generate your next password? What do you do? What do you
Hmm.
think?
I don't know. I mean, for me, the efficiency of it, and I mean, in our world, we just have so many passwords. We know, you know, nothing is perfect. I think you sort of enter into using LastPass or Password Manager in anticipation of something like this happening. Um, so you just try to do your best, and you make your decisions based on what's big picture, what's best for the business and for your clients and that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, I mean,
um,
LastPass has signaled to us that they will continue to communicate security compromises in their organization, right? They've signaled to us that they will support us with knowledge and information on how to um, respond to the vulnerability, right?
mhm,
So in a way, in my opinion, is the value of the password manager is still greater than trying to memorize your own passwords or using some other irresponsible password management technique.
mhm,
And at the same time, the vendor has signaled to us that in the event of, we're going to continue to communicate, we're going to and empower you with response measures. Which, let's face it, the response measures for a password manager compromise is to just change all your passwords in the vault
mhm.
and change your password to the vault and reset your MFA. That's what I've taken away from this.
Right. Which are generally best practices anyway. And most, at least on the financial services side, you get the note like, oh, your password's 30 days old. You need a new one. So
Right.
that's sort of in the flow of operations anyway.
Right.
Um, so do you recommend people that are using LastPass and have a client beyond that? Do they need to communicate to that client that says, hey, we use LastPass and blah, blah, blah? Or is that
That's a
one
really good
step too far?
that's a really good question. How much information is too much information?
Right.
How much information is um, information paralysis?
Mhm.
Or not information paralysis, but how much information is too much information? Like, I'm trying to think of a situation where, hey, I went to a bar. I'm your IT manager. I went to a bar on Friday. This is hypothetical, right? And I left my cell phone, which is password protected and for all appropriate measures secure. I left it on the bar while I went to take a leak, and then I came back. Like, do you
Mhm.
now have to send an email campaign to your clients that, like, maybe the phone was compromised? I don't know, So if you have access to their systems, and that's kind of the craziness of some of these hacks, because um, you could, there could be a real, and I'm sure there is in some scenarios and contexts, a situation where by a hacker hacking LastPass, downloading all these vaults, they're exploiting these vaults, and now they have a whole web of access to on like a crazy amount of systems. And it's like, how fast can everybody update their passwords? Will everybody update their passwords? I mean, we, as soon as this hack was announced, I think in August, I instituted a company policy, like the next time you log into a system, change the password. Like, we were already like in this thing for us, for our clients, we're like cascading through this.
Mm-hmm.
Will our competitors do that? Will end users do that? Like, probably not. So the fear of having a hacker, and the good hackers will do that. They'll maintain an established access to systems and not do anything nefarious and not do anything damaging. They'll just quietly observe and exfiltrate data. I mean, that's what they do,
Mm-hmm.
but that's why you also, a good a well-managed IT infrastructure will institute things like appropriate password change policies,
Mm-hmm.
forced MFA. So that window of opportunity for the hackers keeps getting narrower and narrower and narrower. So it's like, it's the fantasy of total mitigation of exposure is just that. I think it's just a fantasy, but you just do all of the things that the technology providers give us, all the tools. You employ all the reasonable tools and measures to just mitigate. It's mitigation. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's any sort of security. That's just not data security. I mean, yeah, you lock your doors. Does it mean somebody can't break into your house? Of course not. You lock your car when you go into the grocery store. Could somebody unlock it, or get a scrambler or something that unlocks all the Volvos or Subarus in the parking lot? Of course they could. So,
Right.
you're doing the best you can, knowing nothing is foolproof.
Right. Right. And I think our the modern generation understands that, like, if you are going to exist in the interconnected community, i.e., the internet, like, the exposure is ever present. It's just, your information's out there, and good luck.
So did LastPass here? Did they give users a free month? Did they give users a free month to the credit bureaus, or what did they do here to make it right?
That's a really good question, and I don't think they did.
Okay, all
I
right.
don't think they. I don't. They. We are privileged to serve millions of users, and more than 100,000 businesses.
Hmm.
I don't think they gave free credit monitoring to millions of users. I think that would just be, that would shut them down. I think, Interestingly enough, though, it seems to be a value add that most credit cards and a lot of
Yeah.
services provide. So, um, you, I think most middle road individuals, at least in the developed world, maybe have access to some credit monitoring. I mean, I don't know. That's not a pass for LastPass, but um, yeah, they did not seem to give any giveaway. Just, it looked like a lot of the language of the whole thing, like I said, is like some of the sharp edges were just sanded down a little bit from the detail standpoint. The details seemed a little light from a technical. What did we do to improve this? It's a lot of like hat in hand. We're really sorry. We're doing better. We did everything that we could to respond. Here is here is what we have done to secure LastPass, which is, platform infrastructure and endpoint security enhancements designed to strengthen our environment and operational security. Continued tuning of our production environments, detective and preventative controls. Like,
Mhm.
that's not anything. You know what I mean? It does. You didn't tell us anything in that sentence.
Right.
Continued hardening, enhanced logging, alerting, and validation of security of our cloud storage environment. Also, you didn't tell us anything in that sentence. You know what I mean? Um, this is interesting because this is what we tell our clients all the time. We no longer sell antivirus. We don't find antivirus to be effective anymore. So the successor technology to antivirus is called EDR, or endpoint detection and response,
Mhm.
which, the way the EDR works is it monitors the behavior of the use of the computer system. And if the if the EDR detects like all of a sudden a whole folder tree is starting to encrypt its data, like it will freeze that process, and then it'll report, because that is obviously an anomalous behavior. Or it'll like, are you sure this folder tree is being encrypted? Is this intentional? That sort of thing. And it does, I think, use some legacy like signature based antivirus stuff, but it like goes above that. I don't want to use AI, but it does behavior monitoring. You know what I mean? But one of the measures that they've done to secure their systems, they've enhanced endpoint security controls for developer and engineering, including the deployment of. So this is interesting. They didn't have EDR, or they say of a new managed EDR. So this is where like some of my colleagues in the industry might say like, they didn't have EDR. That's outlandish for a security company not to have EDR. But this is where like they keep inserting all of these rounded corners, right? In deployment of a new managed EDR system. That doesn't tell us that they didn't have a managed EDR system. It doesn't tell us that they had an old managed EDR system. It doesn't tell us that they didn't have EDR. So a lot of the flamethrowers out there are going to they're going to take that sentence and say they didn't have EDR. What else? Some technical stuff: acceleration of product enhancements designed to improve security, increased, and then they start referencing encryption algorithms, some encryption methodologies, working to encrypt URL and URL related fields. So it came to realize that not all the fields and the data in the vaults were encrypted. So the URLs for the sites, so if you're saving your password for facebook.com, the URL facebook.com is saved in that record, so that the password manager can read when you're there and present the password credentials in the password fields on the site. So apparently that URL for each record wasn't encrypted. So, that could be, that's called metadata. So like the hacker could derive some important information about where you are and, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's really important. I think that gets lost in a lot of these sort of hacks. Like you can learn a lot about a person and on the dark web as they compare these databases without knowing someone's name and without knowing their passwords. You can still put together a pretty intense profile of somebody based on, if they've got a Vanguard.com account. I mean, they've got that. Even if you don't have the password, there's still value there to knowing that information and linking that up to another table that you previously hacked 6 months ago that's also available on the dark web and that sort of stuff. I mean, just by getting somebody's username that they may use across multiple platforms. We talk a lot about passwords, but using the same username. If you've hacked this database and somebody's using BW1234 and you know that this other database you hacked 6 months ago, somebody was also, you can pretty much deduce that that's the same person. So so the metadata being hacked is pretty important. And you wouldn't, obviously, as a user, if your account's been compromised in some way by somebody using your password, but you may not know what's being compiled about you out there in Metaland. So I think,
and that is one of the things, like, I'm not a LastPass apologist at all. Like that is one of the things that a security company should have known. They should have known what kind of metadata they're leaving exposed by unencrypting these fields. Like that's what's infuriating. Like they really didn't seem to be. It almost felt like real minimum baseline for security for this organization. That's what's really That's what's really frustrating with them. So, a lot of these other measures are technical, so they're interesting to the IT guy. I don't think if we have non-technical resources, they would be too interested in this. But initiating efforts to streamline multi-factor authentication, enrollment, and rotation of MFA shared secrets, so now not only is MFA the single most important security mechanism for a credential, but now rotating the MFA shared secret. So right now, like the MFA, there's MFA code in the vaults that the hackers siphoned off. But if LastPass had technology where we rotated those, 1,000 times a second every day, whatever the rotation is, it would neuter whatever is in the downloaded vaults. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yep.
Um, Again, like why did they not anticipate that would be an appropriate technology in the event they didn't plan for the worst case scenario? That's what it seems like. You know what I mean? They just seem like their doors were going, the locks on their doors were going to be good enough. So, and that just kind of seems like that is what is built into their culture and their product. So
That's a bad idea to have that sort of culture in the company that's designed to prevent that kind of
I
stuff.
agree. I
You
agree
know,
for sure.
it's like why have a
Um,
safe in your house if your doors are locked, right? But it,
yeah, it's like having a safe in the house, but maybe parking it in your living room with like a simple deadbolt. You know what I mean?
right.
Rather than like putting solid bolts on the doors and then putting
Mhm.
the safe in a safe room that is like not, nondescript or something. I don't know what the metaphor is, but
Yeah.
um, maybe this is a wake up call. Will we see? The question remains, because the hack is over. It's been over for months, so
Mhm.
they're totally in, um, you know, PR mode and support everybody mode, right?
Mhm.
Like I said at the beginning of this topic, I think this is them putting a bow on it.
Yep.
They're ready to move forward from it. The question is, will you and I be talking about this again this year or next
Mm.
year
Right.
in the next hack? If that's the case, bet you Congress gets involved. I'm not kidding.
Yeah. Right. And I think if this is a larger platform, they definitely would.
It's one of the largest platforms for sure. I mean, they even by their own admission, I mean, whether it could be fudged or not, a million, hundreds of millions of users across 100,000 businesses.
Hmm.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they're not the only game in town. But again, like I don't know if I would trust the smaller outfits to communicate when
Hmm.
something like this happens.
Yeah.
Don't forget, there's a CEO somewhere making the decision with a small team of everybody who's worried about their jobs, saying like, do we disclose this or not? Because if
Right.
we,
Right.
we're going to shed 10% of or 20% or some massive percentage of our client base if we disclose that we lost the keys.
Hmm.
Um, and that's something my company faces too, by the way. And
Sure.
thank God we have never been compromised ever. So we've never had to write the hard letter to our clients. But IT companies are being attacked. There was
Yeah.
last year. There was a major hack that targeted a management tool that IT companies use to remotely access
Mm.
hundreds and millions of computers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the hackers are targeting the janitors with the keys. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So as far as actionable items, if you're using, individual or family plan, or you're a user at a company, is there anything actionable that you would recommend that's kind of different than sort of normal course of business? I mean, you want to change passwords and usernames on a regular basis anyway. So is there anything here that's different that somebody should do today?
Yes, in this
Okay.
order, change your master password. If you're This is specifically if you're a LastPass user, and
Okay.
this whether you're business or personal, or the free version or whatever. In this order, because this order is specific, change your master password,
Okay.
reset the multi-factor authentication security item. So like you have to log in, go into your account, change your password, log back in, and then change like disable MFA, and then re-enable it and then that and then on the third item change every password in the vault in
Okay.
that order, um, and don't walk but run to do that.
Hmm.
In fact, we've been saying this for ever since we've learned of the attack, so hopefully by now everybody has long updated their passwords. And then the other thing too is LastPass doesn't really give us a lot of management. I'm so disappointed at the limited management tools that they give us to
Oh.
see like, what passwords haven't been changed in
Mhm.
a period of time. So like we don't have that report. So some of the stuff that what we have done, they said they're giving us new. I don't know where they're giving us new reports and management tools to um I forgot where it was what we have done. So they're giving us more management tools and reports to help with this process.
Okay. And does that let you force changes on the user side?
Yes, the corporate managed accounts, we can force changes and things like that. But unfortunately, the nature of doing that can be really disruptive. So unfortunately, a lot of this mitigation stuff does need IT's support,
Mm-hmm.
which is also awful.
Yeah. Well, slow down, take your time, do it right. I know it's a pain. Nobody wants to change every username and password and all that kind of stuff, but it's the right thing to do, especially if you're not the ultimate end user. If you're somebody who has a client base who could be affected by this, you got to take your time and do it right.
Yeah. All right, that brings us out.